Good morning and welcome back to The Advantage. It's been a while, but we're excited to chat today. We have some exciting news coming up.
So we are happy to release our 2021-2022 political spending projections this week.
Yeah, so you might have seen there was a feature in the Wall Street Journal, which was quite exciting for us around here. You can also download the full report at the link below, but if you don't feel like reading it, we are here to walk you through some of the highlights. So why don't we start off with that big top line number? It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the top line level, we're projecting $9 billion in political advertising spending for 2021-2022, which would be a huge record for a midterm cycle.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible it's incredible talking about that number regardless. We were all pretty astonished at the heights that the 2020 cycle reached, but of course you had a highly competitive presidential election and a Democratic primary with two billionaires.
Yep.
So to talk about the midterms in the sense of $9 billion feels crazy. So can you break that number down a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people think at the top line that looks crazy and sounds crazy. But when you break it down, it really makes a lot of sense. So the Senate category is just as competitive as ever. You have a 50-50 Senate, obviously. And there's a lot of big Senate states up next year. You've got Pennsylvania, you've got Florida, you've got Georgia, you've got North Carolina, you've got Arizona. Those are about as competitive and large as the states get, which is, as we kind of know, is the perfect combination. The biggest thing, though, is the governor category that is really interesting because, as a lot of you probably know, most governor seats are up on 4-year terms, 2018, 2022, 2026. And that actually in 2018 was a larger category than the Senate. So we're expecting that to be about a $2.5 billion category, which is really going to kind of drive that money up. When we're looking at it, that's almost as much as we saw in the presidential last year. We saw about 3.5 in the presidential. It's really only about $1 billion less than we saw in the presidential. So the on-cycle, off-cycle nature of the presidential race doesn't really affect spending as much as a lot of people would think. Because, presidential spending made up about a third of political spending last year, but it was really, it's not everything. It's not 60%, 70%, like a lot of people I feel like think it probably is.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we noticed too is not only are we seeing an evolution in how much money is spent and the categories where it's being spent and the conversations that are happening up and down the ballot, but also an evolution in the media types to which these dollars are going. So talk a little bit about the media type breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we're really excited to have this year, courtesy of our friends at Cross Screen Media, is projecting connected TV money for the first time, which we expect to be about $1.4 billion this coming cycle. And that does seem like a lot, but this is something that's seen tremendous growth. 2020 was really a driver from that. We know people have been kind of pulling the plug or cutting the cord for years now, and 2020 really accelerated that cycle. That said, broadcast and cable, traditional television is still going to be the lion's share of spending. We still expect to see probably 2/3 of money going to traditional TV because it is still the largest source of viewers. If you want to go to one place, ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC are still the best places to find masses of persuadable viewers, which is really kind of the key demographic that you're looking at for voters.
Well, and as we talk about frequently, a lot of that spending gets loaded into the back end. So we won't see we'll see broadcast spending, but we'll probably see the most broadcast spending the closer we get to Election Day in 2022. Whereas the digital dollars, maybe even some of the CTV dollars, we'll be watching how those are placed throughout the early stages of the cycle.
Yeah, one of the things that we found again and again when we look into this is that digital money on Facebook particularly, but Google a little bit as well, is overwhelmingly fundraising dollars. Sign up for my mailing list, give me money. And they invest very heavily up front into that kind of, it's an investment essentially. They invest in that up front. Then that pays dividends at the end when they blast the airwaves on TV and radio and CTV with persuasion ads at the end. So you see, people are launching their campaigns. Val Demings, John Fetterman, others are launching their campaigns and spending millions of dollars on Facebook within the first, month of their campaigns, which is something we haven't really seen before, going back cycles, but really provides a major investment that then you can go up with on kind of the traditional linear channels later in the election.
I'm glad you mentioned Fetterman. We had a conversation last week with Paul Steinhauser at Fox News. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend checking it out. We got some of his takes on the upcoming cycle. But one of the things we talked with him about was the nationalization of political races, which is not necessarily anything new. But we're definitely seeing in recent cycles how digital fundraising allows candidates to just haul in cash from all over the country, not just from their constituents.
Yep.
And that's another thing that's really leading to this explosion in ad dollars, is that you're not just targeting the people of Pennsylvania anymore. There are donors in California that can give to Fetterman's campaign if they wish to, especially this year with the 50-50 Senate, when both parties are really talking about how everything that they want to do, their whole agenda hangs in the balance.
Yeah, and voters are very calculated now. I mean, just thinking of people in our own families, I know the ability to use Act Blue and Win Red to donate so easily. People are making strategic donations to major players in the Senate and then in the House to hold on and hold the majority. It's less localized. It's not, I'm going to elect my senator. We both live in Virginia. It's not going to be, I'm going to elect my senator in Virginia, but there's an eye to the national landscape that's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger with the addition of digital fundraising being such a huge, huge piece of all of these campaigns.
So the one category we haven't talked about yet is the House,
Yeah.
which is also going to be incredibly competitive.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the Democrats lost a bunch of seats somewhat unexpectedly in 2020 and hold a 4-seat, I believe, advantage.
Tenuous.
Tenuous advantage, certainly. So the interesting thing in the House is that we saw a record cycle for House spending in 2020, even when it wasn't really the focal point. In 2018, all of the attention was on the House. In 2020, it was really on the presidency and then the Senate a little bit as well. And Republicans did this incredible job of picking up all these seats in 2020, and now the Democrats have this tiny advantage that is going to be really important. But the House is complicated this year for multiple reasons.
Right.
You've got redistricting for the first time. The census was delayed, so a lot of these seats, they're not even going to know what seats they're running in until potentially August of next year. So we expect the House to shatter all spending records. We saw the NRCC and DCCC release spending totals the other day, and they both shattered their records for Q2 of an off year. All the signs point to a huge cycle, but it just might be a little bit delayed. I think a lot of the fields are going to be a little bit frozen, so all the money's going to come in right at the end. Rather than being dispersed all across 2022, it's going to be even more focused in the end of the races than we normally see. And we normally see 70% of the money coming in the last 10 weeks. I think we're going to see even more than that this year, especially in the House.
And for that reason, we should caveat that we will likely be updating our projection for the House numbers just as we have some more data coming in, because right now it's kind of anyone's best guess what's going to happen with redistricting. That being said, like Ben said, another huge category for the cycle.
Yeah, I do want to highlight kind of down ballot and ballot initiative money. This is something that's kind of got under the radar a lot of the time. It's less high profile a lot of the time, New York City mayoral aside. But when we say down ballot, we're grouping together anything that's not federal or gubernatorial.
Right.
But that actually, we're predicting it to be the largest single category. The other category we think is going to be the largest single category. There's a tremendous amount of money going to state House and state Senate races and mayoral races, ballot initiatives out on the West Coast in particular. Right. I think as we've gone on, we realize how much people have more realized how important the down ballot and the local stuff is. If there's gridlock in DC, people can take control of the state House, can take control of the state Senate in their states, and really impact change that way. And we're seeing, multiple $1 million state House and state Senate races in multiple states now, which is something that we never saw before, and we only expect that to continue. So that's something to keep an eye on. And small races aren't necessarily small anymore. What used to be a House race is now a state Senate race or a state House race.
Right, and one of the things that I think is really interesting about the down ballot stuff is the actual ballot initiatives.
Yep.
We saw in 2020 massive amounts of money being spent in California,
Yep.
and it's funny when you look at the top spending states from 2020, you don't expect California to be up there, and it is, because there were a number of ballot initiatives that also pulled in special interest groups who just poured cash kind of quietly into the elections in the state. I'm sure if you were in the state, you were aware it was happening, but that conversation did not quite reach the national level.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that we are able to include that and track those numbers because it really just sheds a lot more light on some of the on-the-ground conversations that get missed in the national, political discourse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
We talk about how much of politics is national now, and that's so true. But a lot of this change is impacted on the ground in your mayor races, your state House, and your state Senate. So it becomes really important to track that and be able to, to be able to know what's going on in those races, because that's where so much of real change actually happens.
Right, and I think that's where, most voters you probably know who your mayor is.
Yeah.
So anyways, we are very excited about this document. Go ahead and head over to the website and check it out. And in the meantime, if you have questions or you would like more data, you can reach out to Ben at the address below. The really cool thing about these projections is they are even more granular than they appear at first blush. So we can provide
a lot of color.
All right, enjoy your week. Thanks.